Hello, the Pioneer viewers. I hope you are healthy and well. We continue with our new map report on the Russia-Ukraine war. In a moment, we will examine the latest developments on the front line with a map. According to the latest reports, there are quite active movements on the front line. Activity here resumed on the cold Kherson front line. Our sources inform us that the clashes are quite fierce. The Kherson front line is quite chaotic. What about the other front lines? There are critical operations on both the Zaporizhia and Donetsk and Luhansk front line. As you know, the winter is approaching. Both armies have accelerated their operations for this purpose. Before winter, both armies are trying to expand their areas of dominance and strengthen their fortifications. So what is the latest situation on the front line? Let's take a look at the developments together. As the Pioneer, we continue our intensive reporting activities. I realized recently that we missed a small moment during the montage. However, a careful viewer did not miss the moment. It is very pleasing that we have viewers who follow our reports so carefully. Thank you all. And if you're ready, let's begin. The Pioneer reports. Let's start our report by analyzing the latest developments on the Kherson front line. First, let's see the Kherson front line on the map. As you know, the operations of the Ukrainian armed forces in this area began with the offensive of the Marine infantry. The Marines landed on the eastern bank of the Dnieper River and created a new bridgehead. We have this one. There were mutual clashes and retreats. However, the Ukrainian army still have active positions in this region. When we look at the developments in the region, we see that the Ukrainian armed forces carried out intensive shelling in 3 regions. These 3 regions are Poima, Peshchenivka, and Podstepnoye region. Ukrainian forces carried out a limited attack after shelling Poima, Peshchenivka, and Podstepnoye. According to local sources, this attack of the Ukrainian army was a distracting attack because the attack did not continue in a comprehensive manner. Because we see that the main attacks of the Ukrainian army took place in the direction of Kherson. There are intensive attacks of the Ukrainian armed forces in this direction. The defense forces of the Russian troops in the area are experiencing very difficult moment. Russian troops are facing an intensive offensive. In particular, the attacks of the Ukrainian artillery units on the region are of critical importance. Russian forces are suffering heavy losses. We see that these losses are not sufficiently compensated. The continuation of this situation will lead to a major breakdown in the Russian defense line in the Russian forces. But there is a critical situation here. For Ukraine, the Ukrainian army also needs to continue to receive support. If the support does not continue, the Ukrainian army may be in a difficult situation. On the other hand, Ukrainian naval forces are conducting critical operations on the banks of the Dnieper River. These operations are aimed at repelling the attacks of the Russian army. Attempts by the Russian troops to advance in the region are being stopped by the Ukrainian Marines. The information we have obtained from Russian sources in the region also shows that the situation of the Russian army has become quite difficult. According to the reports of Russian sources, Ukrainian artillery units are quite strong. The attacks of artillery units causes great damage to the positions of the Russian army. This situation is of great importance for both in terms of protecting and bridgeheads captured by the Ukrainian army and in terms of expanding its positions. Another detail pointed out by the Russian sources is that the Ukrainian army has not yet moved its armored vehicles east of the Dnieper River. Russian sources are following the situation with great concern. According to the claims of local sources, if the Ukrainian army moves its armored vehicles to the east bank of the Dnieper River, the power of the Ukrainian army in the region will increase astronomically. These circumstances make Russian sources nervous. Russian sources constantly appeal to Russian war leadership. These calls are aimed at further strengthening the Russian troops. Let's talk about artillery activities in the region. According to the latest reports, Russian artillery units targeted Ukrainian positions in the direction of Kherson, Tokarivka, and Antoniivka. Ukrainian artillery in turn targeted Russian positions in Oleshki, Kerinki, Poima, Peshchenivka, and Podstepnoye. Now let's continue with the Wuhldar section of the Zaporizhia front line. Says our source, from whom we received our reports on the Robotny section, stated that the region was generally calm. Today, we continue without sharing a report in Robotny. When we look at the Wholda region, we see that the Ukrainian infantry units and Ukrainian artillery units attacked Ryodny in the coordinated manner, but there is no result. Ukrainian troops did not achieve any gains in the offensive in this region. A similar situation exists in Nikolotsky. Ukrainian troops mobilized accompanied by artillery attacks. However, there are no results in the area either. Russian defense forces managed to repel these attacks. There are several important factors here. The first is the relocation of some units of the Ukrainian army along the entire Zaporizhia front line. As you know, and we will talk about this in a moment, the Ukrainian army is conducting a critical defensive operations on the Donetsk front line. In order to support this defensive operations, several battalions or units have been transferred from the Zaporizhia front line to the Donetsk front line. Therefore, we can say that the work of the Ukrainian troops on the Zaporizhia front line has become a little more difficult. However, we also need to take this into account. The Russian army has been attacking in this region for 2 months to clear the positions of the Ukrainian army. However, the Russian army also fails to get results. From this point of view, we can say that the Ukrainian army is still advantageous. Now let's continue by analyzing the latest developments on the Donetsk front line. According to the latest reports, the Russian army is carrying out very important attacks for the siege operation, especially around Avdiivka. Russian infantry units with artillery support organize offensive operations in Mariinka near Permovoskoye towards Severnoye on the southern and eastern approaches to Avdiivka and near Stepnoye. However, Russian troops failed to make any gains during this offensive. The Ukrainian defensive forces continue their successful resistance. When we look at the Bakhmut front line, we see that the Russian army is conducting operations to clear Ukrainian positions from both north and south. According to the latest reports, the Ukrainian army successfully repelled Russian attacks in Klivchivka and Andreevka. During these attacks of the Russian army in the direction of Berkhivka and Bogdanovka, we see that the Russian army made a limited progress. There is also activity on the Luhansk front line. According to the latest reports, the Russian armed forces attacked near Petropilovka and Sinikivka. However, during these attacks, the Ukrainian armed forces held their positions. Russian troops were repelled. Yes, that's it. That's all for today's map report. What do you think? Do you think the Ukrainian army will continue to advance on the Kherson front line? What do you think about the Russian reports on the Kherson front line? Let me know in the comments. I read and care about your comments.